A slightly belated Happy New Year, everybody. New year, new mailbag. Alright guys, I've been wanting to do this for a while and I've just been really busy. I had a bunch of stuff I had to get done at the day job before the new year. There will be more videos. Hopefully I'm planning on trying to get 2 to 6 out during this week. I will be going to the game on Friday when the Hurricanes play the Capitals. And then I plan on attending a game on either the 11th or the 13th versus Anaheim or Pittsburgh and PNC. I'm still waiting to find out some details with that. But I plan on coming down to see another game soon. I haven't been to one since the home opener. I haven't even made it to a Marksman game yet this year, but I plan on changing all that soon as well. So I didn't get to every single comment because some of them were just not really worth talking about. Some of them I may have missed, but I've got a good chunk of them in here and everything like that. I'm going to try and keep up better with the mailbag and everything. I've just been crazy busy, and hopefully you guys will start seeing more stuff from me here soon. So the first one we've got here is kind of a funny one. This was on Sebastian Aho, a modern Rod Brindamore, which is talking about the Finnish one that plays for the Hurricanes that is currently on an absolute tear right now. Finsonainen, I believe is how that's pronounced. That looks to be a Finnish type of name. I love watching Sebastian Aho, defenseman for the New York Islanders, who was also a defenseman for the Bridgeport Sound Tigers a whole lot, but we'll leave that alone. And I replied that he was definitely the second best Sebastian Aho in the NHL. Imagine that. Working so hard to make it to the NHL and you're still the second best Sebastian Aho in the NHL. Not saying that he's bad, he's a great player, but he ain't fishy. And then someone here pointed out something very factual and very hilarious. Both of them scored for the Hurricanes in the playoffs last year, and I remember watching that game, and then when that puck went off of Swedish Aho's stick and went in their net, I called my dad. I laughed really, really loud, and I said, I'll call you after the game. I just had to let you hear that because I was laughing maniacally like I was the damn Joker. And then I hung up the phone, and if he didn't know it was me, he had every right to be creeped out by that. But, yeah, that shit was hilarious. I was, like, in pain. I was laughing so hard when that happened. I was like, our Sebastian Aho put their Sebastian Aho under mind control, or he's just fighting a proxy war through him, and they don't even know it. Thank you guys very much for the comment. Dealey9268, one of my most dedicated viewers, welcome back. Side note, this was on the video about where I read Lone Wolf's article part 2, and I'm actually going to be leaving that topic alone from here on out. I'll explain that in a minute as to why. Side note, I work the state fair almost every night. I spoke to some that are involved with day-to-day with the fairgrounds. They said that there has been a lot of activity in the Dorton Arena. Had to let the Hurricanes ice crew in about a week before the fair started. They were with Tom Dundon. Okay, that is pretty important. As we all know, the Raleigh Ice Caps ECHL played there, yes, and the Canes have purchased the rights to that name. Yep, that's why they had the warm-up sweaters. Could this be for an AHL team or maybe an expansion to the Professional Women's Hockey League, which I believe started, I want to say that started Monday, didn't it? This is not scheduled for a few years, but Raleigh has been mentioned as a possible city for future expansion. That would make sense. Either way, this insider has stated that Governor Cooper has been there as well recently, many contractors in and out, leading him to believe renovations are coming to Dorton for something big. I think that would be a all but like that's an ideal place to have a minor league team if they want to have, because Raleigh's getting big. I mean, it's not like the size of Toronto where you can have the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Toronto Marlies in the same place, or as big as Chicago where you have the Chicago Blackhawks and the Chicago Wolves, although they're not associated with each other. But I think Raleigh is growing fast enough to where, and hockey is popular enough there now, it's been well marketed enough to where if you did put the minor league team in the triangle, which is something that in a couple of my earlier videos, one of my earliest ones actually, one that I made with the cell phone, I was talking about how if they actually did put one in Raleigh, logistically, that would be perfect as far as getting guys called up from there, and, they don't have to go very far, when they get called up and everything like that. I personally would love to see that team there. And the best part about it is NHL games can get expensive to go to. That would give people like a cost-effective alternative, or that's somewhere they can go watch games when the Canes are out of town and they don't have to go all the way to South Carolina to see the Stingrays, or go all the way to Fayetteville to watch the Marksmen, or go all the way to Charlotte to watch the Checkers, or go all the way to Winston-Salem to watch the Thunderbirds. So I think that would be a great place to have it. So I'm hoping that something like that is going on. I think that they should prioritize getting the American Hockey League team there. A PWHL team down the line, sure, that could be cool, but the American Hockey League will continue to be a thing. The PWHL, I don't know how likely that is to last at the moment. It depends on how well they market and everything. One thing I did find cool in that league, though, is one of the rules they made was if you score shorthanded, your penalized player gets to come out of the box early. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. I would never want to see that in the NHL or anything like that, but I think it's a cool rule. So anyway, Dealey, I got a few more from you coming through here. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So on the video I made, one of my really early videos that I made was about my 2 pairs of custom skates that I have. And I'm going to do like a follow-up video up to that, I think, because I actually got way more engagement on that video than I ever thought I would. I'm actually almost thinking about like doing an actual custom buying guide and like making like a PDF type of document and everything like that with just my personal experience on it. And if people request it, I can email it to them with the email account I made for the channel. I might start doing something like that. You guys let me know in the comments what you think. But this gentleman right here, Doug Brady, 5955, says, good rundown. It's been tough finding info on custom Bowers online, so this was great. I finally saved up for some custom skates and am having a hard time deciding between mock customs, waiting for the upcoming shadow customs, or the true SVH full customs. So many pros and cons. Also want to clarify something. You're recommending the sizing as prescribed from the scanner and not readjusting. So like I said in the other video, the one big regret I have with my 2S Pros was when I was trying on the retail versions of the skate at the store to get an idea of the fit, because I had my closest retail size on my right foot and my closest retail size on my left foot. They came from 2 different boxes because my left foot's bigger and longer than my right one. The one thing that felt kind of weird to me, I felt like that it was too close in the toe cap even for me going for a tighter fit. And the one mistake that I made, I went up a quarter size in each skate. Now, it wasn't catastrophic, and it was a good short-term payoff in terms of the skate being a little bit more comfortable and a little bit easier to break in, but now they don't fit as well as they would be fitting right now if I had stuck to what the scanner said. That being said, do not be afraid to scan your feet more than once. When I initially went and got my mocks, I scanned 5 times. Once I got 4 out of 5 times, I got fit 3 for the reading, and there was one time I got fit 2. I tried on fit 2s, and my foot wouldn't even get in them because my feet are like super wide. They're very high. It's a very high volume foot, and I've got a pretty high arch. So scan multiple times. If you can, scan with multiple machines if you want to. Do the true one, do the CCM one, do the Bauer one. I just personally went with Bauer skates because that's what I'm used to. And even like when I did have CCM skates, I put the Bauer toque on them just because that's what I was used to. I felt weird being in CCM skates. I love my Bauer skates. Even though all my other gear is CCM and Warrior, I love Bauer skates. It took me a little bit to get used to the anatomical toe box on the mocks. And even then, I limit how much I use my mocks because I want to save them for like some future ambitions that I may have in terms of playing club college hockey. I'll talk about that another time. I don't know if I'm going to try yet. But I will do a follow-up video for the custom skates, especially now that I've gotten, I think, a little bit better at making videos. I've gotten a little bit better at communicating and everything like that, and I've got this new camera angle here where it'll probably be easier for me to move the skate around and show everybody what I'm talking about. So I think that that's going to be something that I will do in the future and see if I can help people out with buying custom skates more and what criteria that they should get them. Because if you go to the store, you could have started skating a month ago, and they might try to convince you to buy custom skates, which I think is wrong for a multitude of reasons. So once you get into a rhythm with skating and everything, you've been doing it for a couple of years and you feel like you're really figuring it out, they're a good investment. I personally did not do it for performance. I did it more for orthopedic health. The performance is definitely a net positive of it, but I just wanted skates that actually fit me really well, and I never had them until I got customs because my feet are very asymmetric. You're more likely to see an asymmetrical foot than you are a symmetrical foot. It's more common for them to be further apart in width and size and everything like that than it is for them to be closer together, especially if you're an adult grown into your full body. So, Doug Brady, thank you very much for the comment. I hope you find what you're looking for with skates. The one thing I will say about the Trues, they felt really weird to me. I couldn't even get my foot in them, but I've also been told that there's not a skate on the market that molds better than that one. For me, I couldn't get over how tight the toe box on those was because I was very open to getting them. The day I got Bowers, I actually went in there to get another pair of CCM Super Tacs. I think they were on the AS1 or AS2 at the time, and then I switched back to Bauer skates, but I won't buy Bauer or anything else. I might get a Bauer stick. I might get a React 150 helmet at some point or another, but I've not been impressed with Bauer over the last few years, minus their skates, and I used to be completely brand loyal to them. Groza AC, my very first commenter ever. How you doing? Great vid, really excited to see what this guy can do in the show. When does he make landfall in Carolina? This is in regards to the video I made about Alexander Nikishin. 25-26 when his contract with SKA is up. And Dealey again asked me any way that contract can be shortened. Okay, so here's from what I've done with all the research about it, and I've actually had a commenter that said some stuff about in regards to this that it'll be easier when I read it to explain what I think that he meant and everything like that. So here's the whole thing about it. There's the whole MOU issue between the NHL and the KHL that they used to have, and that's been thrown out because of the whole Ukraine thing and everything like that. When it comes to his contract, it would have to be, from what I've researched, it would have to be mutually terminated between him and SKA St. Petersburg, and SKA St. Petersburg gave a lot to Spartak Moscow to get him, and they would be basically losing a bunch of assets early, and they wanted to make sure that, one, that they traded for him and got him, and two, got some use out of him once they did trade for him and everything like that. Considering that we're starting to see some Russians come over here now and everything like that, like Askarov and all those guys, Kaprizov, it's going to be a similar situation, I think, to what Kaprizov was, but the one downside for the KHL here, if they start really doing their best to restrain their top players that are draft picks of the NHL from coming over here, the KHL, I think, would ultimately lose viewership, because the only KHL games I watch personally are the SKA St. Petersburg ones because of Nikishin. Now, once he's over here, I will probably shift my focus with the KHL to other prospects such as Alexander Rykov so that I can watch their game. And just on a quick note, what I see of Alexander Rykov, I see basically a really, really high-end version of Jordan Martinook with a bit more of a scoring touch and better possession abilities. That's just what I see on the surface of what I've watched of Rykov. I haven't seen a ton of him yet. I've actually shifted a lot of my prospect focus to Felix Unger-Sorm. My next video was going to be about Scott Morrow as far as the prospect videos go. But now I have two planned for Felix Unger-Sorm, of which I'm hoping one of them will come out tomorrow, which is just basically where I talk about him and do a video reaction to some of those really amazing plays that he has made in the World Junior Hockey Championship so far. So I think that there will probably not be a problem with getting Nikishin over here, because the KHL would ultimately suffer if they did start keeping players over there. Plus, I think that he wants to come to the NHL. He said something in one of the, it's like I forget the name of the paper, but it's like the Russian version of The Athletic. He essentially said he wasn't going to think about a contract until everything with SKA St. Petersburg was up. So I don't think it's going to be a huge issue. It would have been nice if the Hurricanes could have got him early, because they probably wouldn't have had to have signed Orlov. They could have put Nikishin with Chatfield, because Nikishin, while he is a high-risk, high-reward, and defensively competent player, he will probably play his best with a safety valve, in my opinion, so that way he can step up and make those big hits, make those well-timed pinches, and all that type of stuff. So unfortunately, I don't think that we're going to see him until it's time to see him, but luckily we've got enough on the blue line to where, he'll be coming in here in the first 2 years, he'll be on an ELC. By then, the cap's going to go up a whole lot. Slavin will more than likely be re-signed for somewhere between $8 and $9 million. I think Chatfield is going to stay. We've got the stopgap with Orlov until Nikishin does get here. I think between Pesce and Shea, they'll sign at least one of them. Right now, I think that Shea would be the better option. So when he gets here, the defense will already be built, and then he's just going to come in here, and he's going to be a supplementary piece at first, even though he's ready to play second pair minutes now, and then he will be the guy on the blue line within a couple of years. Not to mention Russian defensemen. Orlov is an example. A lot of times they play their offhand really well. Nikishin is left-handed. He could very easily play the right side and generate a ton of offense with someone like Slavin covering for him on his strong side. So we'll see what happens with that. I think we'll see him come over here in the 25-26 season, as initially thought. Thank you guys very much for the comments, and I'm going to try to be at that game when he plays his first one here. All right, so the three comments on the left are all in regards to the aforementioned Alexander Nikishin video. Ryan T1090 says the hip check is a beautiful thing, and I'd love to see him throw his fair share of it in a Canes uniform. And I could also argue that the hip check is safer, but that's basically its own topic. It deserves its own video. The short version of it is, though, after watching Nikishin lay as many hip checks as he has, it seems like guys normally get up and they're no worse for wear, whereas if he was hitting them upright, he would absolutely destroy them, especially with as many people skate in the European, or especially if he catches somebody with their head down and everything like that. Yeah, that would be bad for them. Thomas Carmel 8188, another one of my very dedicated viewers and commenters. Thank you very much. Such a cool prospect video, man. Keep it up. Thank you. Joe Moline forgive me if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. Malini. Joe Malini08 says, when is this guy coming to Carolina for his debut? 25-26. As aforementioned, now we do have to keep in mind the possibility that maybe it doesn't happen. But if the Hurricanes were convinced it wasn't going to happen, I think that Timo Meier would have been a Hurricane right now, because that was what apparently the Sharks really, really wanted in exchange for Timo Meier. And it's already been said, Nikishin is off the table. Morrow is probably off the table. Felix Unger-Sorm, after the way he's performed at the World Junior Championship, he is probably most certainly off the table. I would not be surprised if Bradley Nadeau is also off the table. And then the two comments here on the right, I put up a poll asking which prospect that everyone would like to see after Scott Morrow, even though I think that Felix Unger-Sorm is going to be who I start really covering next. XFetch37. I wonder if that's the same one on Twitter. Oh, that would be cool. To be honest, both Felix Unger-Sorm and Bradley Nadeau. Bradley Nadeau will get a video as well. Jackson Blake, I don't know a lot about yet. I do know he's killing it in the NCAA right now, so I'm going to definitely make sure that I start paying attention to him now that I'm going to have a little bit more time on my hands. So all you guys, thank you very much for the comments. A whole lot more coming up here. I'm not going to spend too much time on these right here, but I just wanted to show that despite all the kind of nasty comments that got thrown around in the video where I analyzed the whole Aho and Fox collision thing, and I don't want to, reopen any old wounds really or anything like that, especially after the way we killed them last night. But what I want to show here more than anything, there were people in there having civil discourse in the comments and actually objectively discussing it. I see the case for why some people wanted an interference call. I'll actually tell a quick story at the end of the mailbag as to why I understand it a little bit more now. But whole thing about it is, it's like there were some people having some disagreements about it and everything like that. What I didn't like was where people were saying that Aho was trying to hurt the guy, because anybody who's ever played hockey at all before knows that a knee-on-knee collision of any kind, whether there's intent or not, is dangerous to both parties involved. You're just as likely to hurt yourself as you are the other guy, and anyone who doesn't think that that's the case, then I don't really know what to tell you, because I know getting clapped on the knee, it hurts. So, and it's dangerous. So, Robbie Byron, I guess that's how that would be pronounced. What people aren't pointing out is that Aho changed his skating lane when he saw Fox head down lower, where he was going from the point and trying to go to the slot to position himself for a shot. By doing so, contact was unavoidable despite Fox's best efforts. Since Fox didn't have the puck, it's interference. It's not a dirty play by Aho. Check all the possibilities that warrant an interference call per Rule 625. The key is Aho changed skating lanes in the split second prior to Fox's move. Ryan, good to see you, buddy. I didn't even see the contact when I first saw the clip. Even the first 4 times Aho stopped skating, doesn't go in for a hit or go for contact, and Fox's leg is stuck out in front of Aho. He's skating forwards, and they make contact. How are either of them at fault in anyone's mind? That's the way I interpreted it, too, because Aho could have just as easily been the guy who got hurt on that play. Bills1338 says, I'm a 60-year Ranger fan, but I cannot see where Aho did anything wrong. If anything, Fox's leg was extended and he collided with Aho. An interference call would have been appropriate, but that was just a collision where Fox ended up hurt. And then Panthers J-Dub, who subscribed thanks to that video, welcome back. I got another comment in here from you, I believe, as well. So that showed that, even though, people were having disagreements about it and everything like that, there were some guys in here saying that Aho habitually uses his stick as a weapon. And the first person I heard say that was Eddie Olczyk last year in the playoffs when Aho and Tatar had the little exchange they had, even though Tatar was the one who took the baseball bat to Aho's head. So it's like a lot of people saying that Aho's dirty, they parroted what Eddie Olczyk was saying, and Eddie Olczyk has made it abundantly clear that he has personal issues with the organization, and he's not a very good professional anyway. He's not a very good commentator. He needs to just stick with doing Bosley commercials and bitching about ice cream, because he just sucks at his job. I'm sorry, he does. But just wanted to shout out all 3 of you guys right there, 4 of you guys actually. Thank you very much, all of you, for the comments. A little bit further here on the whole Aho and Fox video, because I've never had so much engagement in my life on a video. I mean, and it wasn't all positive, I can tell you that, but I didn't expect it to be going into it. I'll make this a little bit bigger. There we go, that'll work. So Gene Perry 3411 says, let me show the guy's face. There we go. There's no call there. It was a collision. I officiate, and I wouldn't have called that in an amateur game. And like you said, interference on which player, just because Aho got up and Fox didn't, doesn't mean Aho is guilty of anything. And my buddy Matt Griff, what's up, dude? Good to see you. I agree with everything you said here. And, there were two things in particular I remember saying in that video, and if I didn't say them exactly like this, forgive me for paraphrasing and everything. If they'd called interference on Aho because of where the play was at and where the puck was at and everything like that, it would have been one of those things where I would have just kind of like shrugged my shoulders at him and like, yeah, okay, no big deal. It's like, minus Fox getting hurt, which nobody wanted to see that. And the other thing I said in that video is the next time we play them, we need to fucking destroy them. So since I said that then, I guess I'll go ahead and say this now. When I am at the game on Friday, Carolina, if you're listening to me, we need to fucking destroy them. And there's standings implications with it too. Don't hurt anybody, but if you want to put up another 6-1 win, I'm not complaining about it. So thank you guys both very much. Oh, also, I will leave a link to the last time I was on Caniac Sessions with, it's Matt's show, but I was only on there with AB. And we had a really good time. We talked about a lot of cool stuff. Go check that out. I'll leave the link to it in the description. Thank you guys very much for the comments. Charlie T. Wilbury says, Rangers fan here. I saw it live in the replay. Just confirms what I saw. Incidental contact between two players. There was no intent to injure here by either guy. Stuff like this just happens. Unfortunate accident. Sam Pernicano, I believe that's how that's pronounced. Forgive me if I'm doing it incorrectly. I am 71 years old, and I have been a huge Rangers fan for 55 years, and I totally agree with your assessment of this incident. Excellent critical analysis of this. You have earned my respect. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. And I just want to show, I know that in Carolina we don't care for some fan bases sometimes because of how many of them have moved there and kind of have taken over our building at times. They're not doing as much. Granted, we're not the only ones to deal with that problem, i.e., anytime Toronto plays in Buffalo, Calgary, or Ottawa, for example, it's typically filled with a lot of blue sweaters and everything like that. But, I just wanted to point out, not all these guys were out for causing problems. So, had Aho been the guy who gotten hurt, I would have been like, well, that sucks, because that's all I saw was unfortunate contact. And if they'd called interference on Aho, shoulder shrugs. That's all I really would have done about it. Because I can kind of understand the official would be in an envious position there, because if I had no allegiance to either one of those teams, for at least a split second, I think I would consider calling something. I'm not officiating yet. I'm studying the USA Hockey rulebook right now. That's part of the reason that I've been away. I think it's something I would like to do eventually, but I want to make sure I really, really know the rulebook, because some of the officials I've known, they only go out there so they can collect a paycheck and they half-ass it and they don't put a whole lot into it. And the type of leagues I play in, because all I really play is in beer league and veterans hockey tournaments, the only guys that are getting paid to be there are the officials, and I feel like they should do a good job, and a lot of them don't. They just go there and lackadaisically go through the motions so that they can collect $60 or $80, whatever it is per game. I actually want to be good at it because I've bitched about the officiating so much. I don't want to become part of the problem. Thank you guys very much for the comment. Michael Aaron, another one of my most dedicated viewers. Good to see you. This is also on the Nikishin video. He plays for Putin's favorite team, so it will be difficult and or expensive to get him over here. And I told them about how the very first video I made about Alexander Nikishin, before I had any lighting or anything, and the camera was sitting on top of my monitor here and everything like that. So I did see something that it wasn't confirmed reporting as far as I know, that the Hurricanes, prior to the previous offseason where they signed Orlov, offered SKA St. Petersburg $1 million to get him. And SKA St. Petersburg gave up a lot more than the equivalent of $1 million in terms of what they traded to Spartak Moscow to get him. I think it was a 5 or a 6-piece trade, ultimately. So they want to get their use out of him before they let him go. But his contract's, when it's up, I really do think we'll see him. And then there was another guy here, User U1OBY, something like that. We'll just call him User from here on out. You consume too much propaganda, pity your brain. Every hockey player wants to play in the NHL. All in good time. Right now there is just no room for him in the lineup, only in farm. Then what's the point? Now he is getting a lot of playing time in the best organization in the league and improving his skills. That is absolutely true. So there's some people who make the argument that the American Hockey League is the second best hockey league in the world. I disagree. I think the KHL is the second best hockey league in the world. Nikishin could not have much better circumstances for developing. Now, had we been able to buy him out of his contract and sign him to an ELC prior to this season, I think that the best thing you can do is throw him right into the fire in the NHL, let him start off on the second pair, maybe the third pair. He wouldn't need any time in the minor leagues, even if we did have an agreement with somebody to send him somewhere to loan him out to an American League team. The only reason I would think that he would need to do that is to get used to the smaller ice. I think that's not going to be too much of a problem for him. I think that, be patient with him for about 10, 15, 20 games, and then he'll hit superstar status within, I'd say, a season after that. If that's just me kind of projecting what I see with his career from as much as I've watched him play. We offered an extra $1 million in the buyout. He or the organization declined. I would imagine it was more so on the organization, but it's also like, maybe he's just like, yeah, I just want to finish out my contract here and, maybe get a Gagarin Cup if he gets the chance and everything like that before he comes over here. But he really could not have better development circumstances. User is correct about that. I'd rather have him playing there in SKA St. Petersburg than being loaned out over here in the American League, especially when we don't have an affiliate right now. So this is actually best case scenario. The Hurricanes don't have to dump any assets or any time into developing him. Just let him do it over there, and then he's already ready now. When he gets here, he'll just be even more ready to go. Michael Aaron also said, and we would make room. Pesci and Shea are both due for a contract the season's in. I'm glad you speak for every hockey player, though. I don't think that he was trying to do that. It's just, judging by his name and his little profile picture thing, he's probably Russian, and he might have just accidentally messed up the translation there a little bit or something like that. I don't think he really meant any malice there, per se. But things do get lost in translation between commenters and the media and all that type of stuff. So we'll see what happens, but thank you guys very much for the comments and everything. Alrighty. So the top comment here is from Zimbabwe Jim, I believe. Yep, Zimbabwe Jim 7153. This was on the video I made about Jesperi Kotkaniemi has a ton of untapped potential. KK is definitely capable of being a beauty of a second liner, as Arturi Lehkonen has been for the Avs. Just waiting to see who saves Armia from the Habs. And then the other one was under comment under Sebastian Aho, a Modern Rod Brindamore, where Ikak 3065 says, could you do a video how Kotkaniemi is getting better and better in Carolina? I have had something like that worked out as far as I take a ton of notes before I make videos. For example, if you see me make a video that's about 10 or 15 minutes long about a player, I probably had 18, 20 pages of notes, and I take a whole bunch of them and I scratch out all the irrelevant stuff, or I try and condense the information to make it a little bit more streamlined and everything like that before I make them. KK has hit a rough patch. I think he'll be fine. He's always kind of had this problem where he doesn't consistently score, and when he stops scoring, his confidence goes away for a little bit, and then after a while, he hits a stride and he just goes. So if it's anything like last season, and hopefully this is the last season we see inconsistencies like this out of him, which, that's not entirely realistic for any player, but KK has shown, like he did last year, that he can perform really well in the second half, and he was really, really important in the playoffs, too. So I think that, he's just got a monkey on his back right now. Once he can shrug that off, he'll be fine again. It's just a matter of time, how much longer until the monkey crawls back on his back. And that's the only problem he has. Now, another thing that we have to consider with Kotkaniemi, and Shane Willis actually talked about this on the aforementioned Caniac sessions, people were wondering about the whole thing with the offer sheet with Jesperi Kotkaniemi and if it was strictly a revenge move. Shane Willis made a really, really good point about this. The Hurricanes, when they had the second overall pick that eventually became Andrei Svechnikov, the Buffalo Sabres had the first overall pick, which of course was Rasmus Dahlin. The Hurricanes did their homework on Jesperi Kotkaniemi already, and everybody else that was expected to go in the first round there, just in the albeit unlikely event that Buffalo took Svechnikov instead of Dahlin. Now, nobody on the planet expected it to happen, but you have to be prepared for it anyway. So they'd already done their homework on Kotkaniemi, and I think that KK's been an outstanding fit for the most part. He's got his deficiencies, but we're seeing with Montreal that whatever's going on with them, they're not doing a great job at developing prospects in a lot of cases. Caulfield's turning out pretty good, but Slavkovsky is... I don't know how his head's feeling after Steph Nason rocked him a few weeks ago. But KK came here and he was kind of behind the bell curve on some things. Whereas now it looks like he's really been catching up on it and everything like that. And that was another thing that Shane Willis mentioned. All these things that he should be doing well, he wasn't. And that kind of goes back to the Habs messing up his development. And not to mention, he just didn't fit in the environment of Montreal very well. And then a bunch of 40-somethings and people who never played competitive sports at all, called him all kinds of names and stuff because they said, oh, you just can't handle playing in a big market like Montreal. Well, maybe not everybody wants to play in a big market. I personally, I would gladly take a pay cut to not play in a market like that if it were me. So I'd rather play somewhere where I have a little bit of privacy and people aren't spitting on me, throwing things at me because I turned the puck over the previous night or whatever, because that type of stuff does happen in markets like that. For example, look at the stuff that people are saying about the kids that are playing in the World Junior Championship and everything like that. I totally understand why he wanted to get out of there. So, guys, thank you very much for the comments. All right, so we got another one from Dealey9268. So I did a video review of a certain Cardiac Kane article that is no longer there. If you want to read the article, you basically either have to go watch my video or maybe you can go in the Wayback Machine and find it. I don't know. But it was ludicrously bad, and I was surprised my nose didn't bleed when I read through it a second time when I did the video on it. It was bad. Anyway, so he says the article is so bad now and if anybody's wondering what this article was about, it was theoretical ways the Hurricanes could trade for Connor McDavid, of which the author of it, I assume, has not been watching the NHL very long, because he was saying that we could trade for cash considerations, which is not a thing in the NHL. That's baseball, where you trade people for cash. You don't do that in hockey. You can't. And I mentioned in that video the last time I remember somebody being traded for cash, and the only reason I know about this was because of a documentary that was on NHL Network called King's Ransom about when Gretzky got traded to Los Angeles, was cash was included in that trade. So, I don't know. The NHL regulates transactions heavier than probably any other of the big professional sports in North America. So, I don't know where that guy was thinking that, but it was also like Natchez 1-for-1 and for McDavid, and I was just like, what is this guy smoking? Jesus Christ. So anyway, Dealey says the article is so bad. Now, as far as Aho versus McDavid, McDavid is a better goal scorer. That is it. You could say Aho is a better all-around player. So, to a great extent, I agree with that. Now, if I really, really broke it down, like, in a nuanced way, say, this player does this better, this player does this better, this player does this better, it's a little bit of an extensive explanation, but the short version of it is Sebastian Aho is a better all-situation center. He's a better penalty killer, and he's significantly better defensively, has a much better 200-foot game. There are a lot of things that I would definitely say Sebastian Aho is better than Connor McDavid at. McDavid is the better goal scorer, but I would also give McDavid an edge in the playmaking department and a couple other little things, and maybe the possession department. But for the most part, I do agree with the statement that I think that as far as who's better in more situations, I would say Sebastian Aho, who is a better 200-foot center, who is a better defensive center, who is more likely to go out there and shut down players of McDavid's caliber and chip in a ton of offense, Aho, by far. So I agree with that. Look at them when playing face-to-face. Since the junior national play, when going head-to-head, Aho has come out on top. And in the World Championship, he made him look bad there a few times too. Look at Aho's stats versus Oilers. Look at McDavid's stats versus Canes. Yes, stall line has a lot to do with it, as does the Canes' defense. Especially at home. On the road, though, Aho's really done good against Edmonton historically. But in Edmonton, the Oilers coaches have tried to put McDavid on against the Aho line, and it has never worked out well for them. Aho thrives versus other teams' best players, with the exception being Toronto. And he did pretty good the other night when he played against them. And he did what he had to do defensively as far as shutting down Matthews, Marner, and all them guys. So even on nights where Sebastian Aho doesn't score, which is not happening a ton lately, because I think he's now up to 19 points in his last 11 games or whatever it is. The kid's on an absolute tear. He still manages to contribute, or even if he doesn't contribute offensively on any given night, he's still doing so in terms of what he does defensively, good positioning, good poke checking, executing takeaways, all that type of stuff. You always get that out of Aho. So I have watched McDavid a lot. RBA would flip out on him with his defensive play and positioning in the defensive zone. I agree with that. As a former center at a high level and a coach at a high level who is also on the defense first side of coaching, I feel that way about it too, honestly. That's part of the reason why I like most of what the Hurricanes do, with some adjustments that it seems that they've made that are working. He heads up the ice before the team gets a puck, yes. McDavid is 110% attack-minded. It's basically get to open ice, get possession, and go to the other end. I would rather have Aho, who is going to give you that solid two-way game, than a guy like McDavid or Draisaitl, who may put up a ton of points, but it's only a +2 midway through the season. I have watched games where McDavid has been on the ice for 5 goals against. Draisaitl scored 4 in the playoffs last year versus Dallas. The media went crazy. They failed to mention that he was also on the ice for all the Dallas goals, including the game winner. L column, I guess is what that's supposed to mean. The only reason McDavid's plus-minus rose so much last quarter of the season was because of a two-way player coming back into his wing in Evander Kane. That is true. Now, if you want to talk about a trade for Evander Kane, I'm all for it. With all those points, McDavid was a +2 before Kane returned to the lineup, and his wing. Kane was the real reason the Oilers went from fighting for a wild card spot while he was out with injury to fighting for first in the West after his return. The talking heads continue to say the Canes need a big-time goal scorer, but in the East and in this system, that would not work. And that was one of the things that I kind of talked about when I made that video about, if Tarasenko would have been what the Hurricanes needed, and ultimately I decided that he wouldn't have been based on my analysis of it. Goal scorers, and this is going to be talked about with some more comments here later, goal scorers, you have to have a cautionary tale with the quote-unquote pure goal scorer, i.e. see Alexander Semin, who's, one day when I make my video of most hated Hurricanes, I have to decide if he's going to be number one or if Noah Hannafin's going to be number one, because that's about it as far as who would take first place in that race. Look at all the rumor players all the fans wanted the Canes to trade for at the deadline last year. None of them have made a difference on the teams that they have went to. I am not on board with trading Pesce. He's part of the second best defensive pairing by the numbers in the NHL last year. Number one was Slavin and Burns. All the Canes needed was Orlov to fill Ghost's vacancy. The D'Angelo signing was a mistake, and pairing him with Orlov was a bigger mistake. I agree with the latter part, that pairing him with Orlov was a mistake because they're both offensively minded guys. You and I are probably just never going to agree on Tony, but I think that they brought him back because they anticipated Shea and or Pesce getting traded, and it never happened for whatever reason. Pesce has had a lot of miscues this season, but then he had a game like he had against the Rangers last night where he looked great. He looked like his old self. He made that diving play on Trocheck that saved a goal because he would have ate up his own rebound and put it past Kochekov. And when Trocheck played here, we saw how good he was at doing stuff like that. He's a very versatile center, and Pesce did what he had to do to stop him and did it without taking a penalty. Yes, Chatty and Burns played great together. I wouldn't do that again, though, because I just don't think that's sustainable. In Slavin's absence last year, but could it last? Well, no, I basically just answered my own question. No, I don't think it would last. Orlov needed someone to solid play with while adjusting to the Kane system. Chatty would have been that guy, not Tony D'Angelo. Yeah, the only reason I can think of that they tried that is to reference my other favorite sport, and that of baseball. When Orlando Arcia and Vaughn Grissom were looking to see who was going to play shortstop since Dansby Swanson was gone, Arcia asked Brian Snitker, the manager of the Braves, why am I not being played at shortstop when you know I can do it? And he said, I know that you can do it. I don't know if Vaughn Grissom can do it. I have to see. So I think that they were just going to rule that out. Was it a decision I particularly agreed with? No, even though I like both those guys. I'm a really big Tony D'Angelo fan. Orlov has really, really grown on me even more, especially like now that he's starting to lay the body on people a lot more, which the team desperately needed physicality. The only thing I would disagree with as far as Orlov filling Ghost's vacancy is he's not the, I'm trying to think of the right way to put this. He's not a pure power play quarterback like what you think of with Ghost, D'Angelo, guys like that. But he definitely has that capability. He did it some in Washington, but he normally wasn't the guy on the power play for them. Carlson did the heavy lifting as far as power play quarterbacking in Washington. Now, Orlov has shown that he does have that capability, but we have a better option as far as a power play quarterback goes with Shea, with someone who's in the lineup all the time where we need a left-handed power play quarterback. And I always thought Shea had that capability, and then when they used him on the power play last season, I really liked it. That was something I was advocating for before they did it. I remember telling a friend of mine, we were talking about it at work one day when Shea was, steadily, scoring goals and everything like that. I'm like, I really want to see Shea on the power play, and it worked out pretty well. So that's another reason that I think that you could keep Brady Shea, is because you can kind of use him in all situations. He's great 5-on-5. He kills penalties. He defends well. He lays the body on people, and now we're finding out that he's a power play quarterback on top of his ability to score 5-on-5 because he drifts to the top of the circle and finds an open spot. But I think I have one more comment in here from you. Thank you again very much. I appreciate it. I love these guys that come back and keep leaving these repeat comments. It's great engagement. All right, so these comments are also from that same aforementioned video about me reviewing that abomination of a Cardiac Kane article. Every day is like a field trip says, I started noticing last year how off the takes were on that site. I don't even read them anymore. I've never really read them a whole lot. Actually, I can tell you the last time I sat down and read a Cardiac Kane article, Derek Ryan was on the team. Because I really admired Derek Ryan, but I didn't understand why he was being deployed so damn much by Bill Peters. I know that there was a little bit of favoritism involved in that, and I respected the adverse path that Derek Ryan took to get to the NHL, because statistically speaking, he shouldn't have made it, and he did, and I'm glad that he did. He's a great guy and a great player, but he wasn't someone who needed to be out there during damn 3-on-3 overtime. Yeah, I've never really read him a whole lot, but that was just awful. AB Caniac Sessions, what's up, bro? Subscribe to this guy, in-depth analysis, and tells it like it is. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and that's someone who knows his stuff too. So please check out their show and also check out Caniac Report. Those guys are really good too. The Branderis says, I couldn't agree more. My brother said the article sounds AI generated. As an aside, I've been thinking a lot about NHL fan bases. I think it's important for us Hurricanes fans to be objective as possible and view things with as wide of a lens as possible with determination. I agree. Now, that was one of the things that I said in the video as well, was like, the Hurricanes are always going to be the Hurricanes are always going to have detractors, and they're always going to get dragged through the mud because we stole the team from Hartford. Because me, 6-year-old me, in 1997, I walked up to Hartford and I said, fuck you guys, give me this shit. And I drugged the entire fucking team down to Greensboro. That's exactly what I did. And all of you out there, even those of you who weren't born yet, who like the Hurricanes, you went to Hartford and you stole the team. Shame on you. So that's one thing. And two, there's always that crowd that believes that hockey doesn't belong in the South. And one thing I will always stand by, or I guess I'll say two. One, the term non-traditional market, I think it's time to kind of let that term start going into obscurity, because one of the reasons hockey had a hard time working in the South before the technology advanced to where you could maintain a rink in warmer climates. It was hard to maintain a rink. It was really expensive. It was really hard to do. And, compressors, dehumidifiers, and all kinds of other stuff that matters to that have come a long way in terms of technology, insulation, everything like that you need to run an efficient ice rink. And I can tell you this. One time I skated at Polar Ice House in Garner when they had pickup on a Friday night there. I've actually skated there 3 or 4 times. I really like it. But the ice there just felt chewed up and awful. But I can safely say there have been places I've skated at up where I live now, in New Hampshire, Maryland, and I want to say Pennsylvania, where the ice has actually been worse. But some of the best ice I've ever been on, the Memorial Coliseum in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, where I usually play in that veterans tournament every year. I didn't go this year. Some of the best ice I've ever skated on, by far. The worst ice I ever skated on was not necessarily anybody's fault. I played one time in Capital One Arena after the Sabres and Capitals played. My beer league team and another beer league team there that we were friends with, we had an exhibition game right after that. That was awful because, guys who get paid millions of dollars to play had just gotten off of it, and there were ruts all the way to China. So it's like, I think it's time to start retiring that term, because where I live now, which has got a pretty decent hockey following and a lot of the kids are playing, 30 years ago, this was called a non-traditional market, if you will. All right, I had to grab me some sparkling water. Now I'm back. As far as the article being AI generated, I actually know who wrote it. Not like know him personally, but he's a little weird because I made an inside joke between me and one of those really savage Canes burner accounts, and I posted it, and the guy came up there and started saying some stuff to me on Twitter about it and everything like that, and I told him, hey, bud, it's just an inside joke. He's like, well, since you want to be rude about it, I think I'll go get my coverage elsewhere. And I don't know if he'd already started working for Cardiac Cane at that point. Aside from the absurdity of the subject matter of that article, this guy also is a librarian, and there was a ton of misspellings, grammar mistakes, and, just generally like straight up forgetting words. Like he would start a paragraph and he'd say, would natures enough, as opposed to would natures be enough, for example. No, it was not AI generated. I think that I could have wrote something better using a pen and putting it and taping it to my big toe. It was that bad. Alrighty, one of the newer subscribers, yet a very frequent commenter on the channel, Fantastic Voyage 262. This was all on the video I made back in the day about the difference between the Pro Stock Made in Canada sweaters and the Adidas Retail Authentic sweaters and everything like that, where I also talked a little bit about the whole debacle with Fanatics coming in to take on the NHL sweaters and everything like that. If they actually end up being good, that will be a very big surprise to me. I'm actually super worried about that. Fantastic Voyage says, I miss having a lot more variety. Games like it used to be, monopolies are never good for the consumer. That's actually when I was talking about making an alternative to the NHL video games with or without the NHL licensing, which is something I'm going to expand on. And if anybody would ever fund my idea, I've got a pretty good one, I think. He goes on. Now, this one, is actually in where I was showing the difference between the made in Canada and the retail sweaters. I really liked the 25th year anniversary jersey last year. Are you going to get the new Whalers set? I am really tempted to. I prioritize getting Kane's stuff. I'm not opposed to the Whalers stuff, but the green one and the reverse retro of the Whalers ones, while I thought they were cool, I wasn't really willing to spend the money on them because I just recently finally got the black alternate, and that was one of my favorites. I have to get a 25th anniversary, of which I'm eyeballing a made in Canada for that. I'm waiting to see if I can get it at the price that I'm willing to pay for it. And I love the reverse retro that they had last season, the red one with the canes across diagonally. I want to maybe get a made in Canada pro stock version of that one, and I've got to decide what names I want to put on what. I definitely want one with Slavin, and I'm waiting to see if Pesci resigns to get one because my Aho and my D'Angelo one are at EPS right now getting sewed up. I've got Justin Williams, Derek Stepan, and Jesperi Kotkaniemi as far as the modern era goes, and the only other named Hurricane sweater I have is my Tuomo Ruutu one that I got back when I was in E3 in the Navy. That I couldn't afford an authentic one back then, so I have a Reebok retail one, and I've got a couple others. But I'm going to make a video where I show off my collection. Would you like everyone to go back to white at home like it used to be? Personally, no. That being said, I think that I wouldn't be mad if they did like a week or a couple of weeks straight where they said, hey, wear the white one at home, or where they wore like the white one at home or anything like that. And like if they just did a one-off here and there where they wore the white one at home, I think that would be really cool. I don't really like the religiosity of them having to wear white on the road, and I'm really glad the Hurricanes started kind of breaking through that with the whole where they did like the preseason game where they were wearing the Reds versus Nashville wearing their yellows. And I really love the red buckets with the white sweaters. I think that looks amazing. I like the white sweater before, but because I like simple templates and everything like that, like I do with like my Tomcat sweater that I designed and everything for my team. But I would really like to see, or maybe at the halfway mark of the season, do like the first half where you wear white at home, and then in the second half you wear the dark ones at home. The SPHL's done that before, so I think that could be cool. But as far as the Whalers stuff goes, by far I think the best looking one is the white one, and the fact that they're going to wear the Cooperalls and warm up like the Flyers did, that's going to be pretty cool too. Now, people have asked, do you think that they'll do the green helmets or the white ones? Considering the theme that they're having with the Whalers stuff, I imagine they will wear the white ones. So if they did the green helmets with that, I kind of wouldn't like it, but it's also like not a big deal to me. And people who are still mad about the team moving from Hartford, even though a lot of them weren't alive for it even, or they were very young, they're still going to complain about it regardless. And if the Hurricanes were to stop doing it, they'd be like, oh, look, you caved to the pressure, or you don't care about your lineage or any of that stuff. And they have absolutely no knowledge of why the team moved in the first place in a lot of cases like that. And then for the last comment here, I never thought my comments would make it to the video. I see others wearing their retail Adidas on their channels, and the neck hole looks droopy because it is cut too big. It's definitely bigger on the retail ones. I'm okay with that, because if I'm like wearing a polo shirt or something like that, it doesn't feel good to have the Made in Canada one on. And plus, you know, I'm in a semi-warm climate, being where I'm at near Northern Virginia and everything like that. And then when I go down south for games, it's a little bit warmer. And then next year I'm going to be going to the game in Nashville, and I'm all right with that personally. If it's cold out, the Made in Canada one probably wouldn't bother me, but I'm also really reluctant to wear that on the road or wear it on an invasion night in PNC, because if somebody spilled beer on my Aho sweater, I'd probably lose my mind. That one may never actually get worn. I might just see if I can get it signed after practice one day or something and put it in a case and leave it there. I don't have to wear it, but I wouldn't mind putting it on my wall. I have also stocked up on my jerseys since I am also skeptical of Fanatics and their shoddy reputation for poor quality control. Poor quality control is putting it lightly, dude. There's times where, like, I saw someone had, like, I think they had a Senator's beanie that had a Devils logo on it, and I'm like, I would keep that just for novelty. And people ask me, what team do you like? The Ottawa Devils. Or the New Jersey Senators, however you want to look at it. Those actually sound kind of cool. And yes, Fanatics would earn some goodwill from the collecting community if they made pro stock for retail. I don't mind paying a bit more for higher quality. I don't either. Like, if they manufacture the exact same ones on the ice that they give retail-wise, or that they sell retail-wise, and they only have to manufacture one type, they don't have to have the three-tiered system having, like, the breakaway style one, the retail authentic, and then the ones that they actually wear on the ice. I'd rather just pay for the ones that they actually wear on the ice. I would just rather get the same product, and I'd be willing to pay a little bit more for it. I really would, especially if they're going to have a 10-year deal. How many different sweaters am I going to have to buy? Because Carolina's only going to have, what, 3-4 a season probably as it is. So, it'll basically be home, away, alternate, and, whatever specialties they have. So I think that, maybe. So I would just rather than do that. You bring up some interesting points on the future of journalism and broadcasting rights. I rarely watch those ESPN and FS1 shows anymore because all they ever talk about nonstop NFL and NBA, and that I don't care about. Do you believe Bally Sports will see its operations with more teams other than the Coyotes this year? How much of a revenue deficit will those teams face if they move their games to a local network like the Coyotes? So the way that I think everything's going as far as broadcasting goes, and the Montreal Canadiens are looking into something like this of having their own streaming service. Here's what I would like to see happen, even though I know that it won't. I would like to see the teams have their own streaming capabilities from preseason to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. I would like for them to be able to say, Mike and Tripp will call every single game from now until Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals that the Carolina Hurricanes are involved in. Streamline that process. They do all the scheduling, all the travel. They go to every single game, whatever, and just have one team covered by one group of people and leave it at that. Because the national broadcasts, one, they're cringeworthy, they're not cost effective, and it's kind of an outdated concept, I think, because when I was growing up, they didn't even televise every Hurricanes game. They didn't start doing that, I think, until like right before I left home to join the Navy. And Bally is looking like they're pretty much done for after this season. I personally would like them to just get their own streaming service, and then there's a possibility of us having our AHL affiliate by then. You could stream them too, and then you could show classic games. You could have like Habs 24/7 style show, something that like profiles the players. You can see what the players like doing in their off time more extensively if they want to do something like that. Talk about other hockey going on in North Carolina, like with the Marksmen and the Thunderbirds. But I don't think that'll ever happen as far as broadcasting goes. Now, as far as people creating content as far as independent media goes, part of the reason I started my own thing is now's a good time to get into it, in my opinion. And I ultimately decided that with the way that the Hurricanes have been covered nationally, and in a lot of cases locally even, with this measly-ass little 27-inch monitor, a used computer, a Logitech G920 camera, and this HyperX Quadcast, of which I didn't pay more than $800 for everything here. I felt like I could do a comparable, if not a better job, and I don't have an agenda. I just say what I think after I analyze things. Am I always right? Absolutely not. But I'm going to do my best to give good answers. And above all, the biggest thing that I can't stand in journalism and media in general, but especially in sports, is the sensationalism that goes along with it. For example, I've already mentioned Eddie Olczyk. I cannot stand him. He is a fan doing a professional's job. I can say the same thing about people like Jack Edwards and Paul Steigerwald. I listen to people like Adam Gold. I don't always agree with him. I do like the fact that he does his best to cover the team in the manner in which he does. I feel like that as far as things like First Take and the Canton Show, and, there's some that I think are still kind of okay. Like the Pat McAfee Show, I've never really sat down and watched it, but everyone I know who does watch it says that it's refreshing, it's a little bit different and everything like that. You used to have big bucks to be able to do something like this, and you had to work your way into it. Whereas I've got all the stuff sitting in front of me here, and I started something that I hope will grow into something big one day. Same thing with my buddies over at Caniac Sessions and Caniac Report. There's times where they record stuff, they put it up, it's audio only, but they're really, they post audio, they're really engaged in social media and everything like that. There's not this monopoly on fan outreach that broadcasting used to have. I remember when I first saw a YouTube video, which I want to say the first time I saw one was 2006, 2007, whatever. It might have been before that, I don't remember. But the slogan back then I remember was broadcast yourself, and that is what it has turned into. I think that it's time for teams to start doing that individually with their broadcasting. And then the best part about that is smaller governing bodies are easier to hold to account. If the Hurricanes have their own streaming service and it's messing up and it's not doing what it's supposed to do, it'll be a lot easier for the fans to hold just the Hurricanes and whatever they outsource their streaming to, or whoever they hire to do their streaming to account, than it is the entire organization of Bally Sports and Sinclair Media by extension. So ultimately, they might have a revenue deficit right off the hop. And this is without me crunching any numbers. This is just taking a guess and estimation on my part. They might lose some money off the top if they went to that route, but I think long term they would be much, much larger gains. So, fantastic voyage. Thank you very much for the fantastic comments. I look forward to hearing from you again here soon. Okay, so all three of these came from a video I made where I was analyzing the defensive structure of the Hurricanes back when it was in some turmoil, which it looks like they've sorted that out for the most part. Even the last few games, Pesci's looked a lot better, which I'm really happy about because I was getting worried he was never going to get back to his game, but it looks like he's getting there now. That Edmund guy, one of my earliest subscribers, good to see you again. If Tony D continues like this, he's going to find himself in the AHL next year. I'd be interested to see him play forward at some point if he can't get together defensively. So I've said before that, like, as far as transitioning from either being a forward to a defenseman like Brent Burns did, or transferring from being a defenseman to a forward like Brendan Smith and Matt Tennyson, for example, both started out playing defense and then have at times played forward. And then the other night, apparently, I think it was Eric Brandstrom, who's normally a defenseman, was playing forward for the Ottawa Senators, and they were really impressed with how well he played. He was on the fourth line, but he apparently played really well. I absolutely think that Tony could do it. There's a two-pronged problem to it, though. One, you already got guys waiting in the minor leagues to come up and play forward, most notably at the moment, Vasily Ponomarev. So you don't want to create too much of a logjam there, but like I really think that if you put Tony in the bottom six and put him on the right wing, he'd be fine, because the biggest difference for him would be, instead of him moving the puck all the way from one end to the other, it would be him just going and finding open ice in the neutral zone. And as far as what he'd have to do defensively, he would have significantly less defensive responsibility. He would just have to make sure he covers his point defense well. I absolutely think he could do it, and I think that as the game continues to evolve, you're going to start seeing more and more times where people come in with one skill set and develop another one, or they have a special skill set like being a power play quarterback, but they're kind of a liability 5-on-5, kind of like Tony is. So he's still an NHL caliber player. He's an excellent skater. He can shoot. He's puck distribution. He's amazing at that. So it's like you could effectively say, okay, play forward 5-on-5 and then put him on the point on the power play and have him quarterback it. Then you're making the best of what he's good at and utilizing him effectively 5-on-5, limiting his mistakes, but also probably giving him a chance to chip in a little bit more offense because that's what he does best. So I think that guys like him and Eric Brandstrom are an example of things like that are going to start happening more frequently. So I would absolutely be interested to see him play forward. I think he could do it. I wouldn't put him at center because of the whole defensive lapse thing, but I definitely think he could play right wing. Absolutely. Bowlcut 3276, that's a funny name. I like that. I completely agree that Chatfield should take D'Angelo's spot. Orlov has steadily made progress in becoming the defenseman that we need, but a more reliable defenseman in Chatfield would allow him to play his best. Yes, absolutely. I thought that Orlov was playing extremely well when he was on the line with Shea, but it makes a lot of sense not to break up the Pesci-Shea line. Yeah, and that's actually starting to look like its old self too, the Pesci and Shea pair, because for a while Pesci was playing so badly it was dragging Shea down, and I could see the hesitation in Shea's game. I have not felt that way the last few games. Brett Pesci, he's still not where he was, but I think he's starting to feel a little bit better and everything like that, whatever was going on with him. It may have been all mental because of his contract and everything, but it looks like he's starting to play more and more like himself. User BBBB8888. There's a lot to unpack with this situation. We have a lot of good defensive talent. We also have Nikishin coming next year after actually, but close. TDA is a high-risk, high-reward type of player for cheap. Chatfield's work ethic has shown he can be a starter and a team player. Out of all the pending UFA defensemen this year, Chatfield's priority one in re-signing, in my opinion. Orlov was a strange pickup in retrospect. Actually, did we need him? Ultimately, this is a business and you need to buy low and sell high. I think that they picked up Orlov because they planned on moving any combination, and the same goes for Tony DeAngelo. I think they planned on moving Shea or Pesci out, or both. And for whatever reason, it just never materialized. I think the biggest factor was they probably had a deal in place for either one of those guys, but their no trade clauses kicked in before they had a chance to execute it, or the deal fell through, or whatever happened. But we also have to consider we don't have a minor league affiliate right now, even though it looks like we've kind of mended the bridges with the Chicago Wolves a little bit. Dylan Coughlin's playing with the Springfield Thunderbirds, and he's doing really well there. Orlov, more than anything, was stopgap. So even though his salary is pretty high, there's no trade protection on him, and it's only a 2-year deal. So even if it was a mistake, which I'm kind of 50-50 on whether it was or not, I'm leaning towards no, though, especially as he started to play better, and he's probably going to have an increased role next year because Pesci and or Shea will probably not be here. but he definitely gives us that little bit of an insurance policy that we're going to still have a pretty stacked blue line. I think he's going to play a lot more minutes next year, though, especially if Shea in particular is gone. Also, we have to take into account that, what if Burns decides he doesn't want to play next year? Orlov can play his offside. He did it most of the time in Washington. And as I learned from Tripp talking on a broadcast one night when Orlov was playing with Shea, he played his offside when he was growing up in Russia. Since he's left-handed, he played right defense. He played the right side. So that's another thing that could be a possibility in the future and everything like that. Not to mention, let's say something goes wrong with Nikishin coming over here, you can look at the prospect of keeping Orlov for longer. So I think that signing was, one, a win-now move, and two, a insurance for later move at the same time. The salary's high. That might cause detriment in terms of trading him if we had to, because that cap hit is big enough to where it's basically a no-trade clause on its own, kind of, and how much the Hurricanes would have to retain to get a deal done to move him out. But that's just my opinion on that particular thing. Thank you guys very much all for the comments. All right, so the first two here, one of them is from my buddy Matt, where I said that Steph Nason is elite on episode 11 of the weekly show, which I'm hoping to do the weekly show again this week on Sunday. Steph Nason is elite. Great video and analysis. Thank you very much. And yes, Steph Nason is elite. Thomas Carmel 8188 says Canes are starting to play like, this was also from weekly show episode 11. Canes are starting to play like we are used to seeing them play. Well, except for the goaltenders, something is still bugging them. And Kochek, this was a few weeks ago, obviously, as you can tell, and now Kochekov has really picked it up. The only thing I'm worried about with him is the fatigue factor, more so mentally than physically. Playing goalie is a very, very arduous thing. I believe it's the hardest position in the game to play, and that's why I'm hoping they'll go get somebody else out at the deadline. And I've got a few that I'm going to talk about at the end here, and I have a separate video. I believe I had 7 goaltenders in addition to the other video I made that had 3 goaltenders in it, which, if I remember correctly, was Vimelka and Ingram from Arizona and John Gibson from Anaheim, and I compiled some more after that, but I just went ahead and put the first 3 out because I knew I wasn't going to really be able to dedicate a whole lot of time to making videos for the next couple of weeks. Something is still bugging them. Hopefully the last of the cobwebs from the rough start to the season. And the schedule's been really hard too. We have to remember that. It was pretty hard to start last year, but you can only have runs like that so many times. And we were about to see them pop off too. That aged incredibly well. Either way, Carolina only needs to stay in a playoff spot. That's it. We don't need any President's Trophy. Plus, the President's Trophy is cursed, and we've already got our conference finals curse we got to get over. We don't need to add on another curse. They don't need to win the President's Trophy. We saw what happens to the President's Trophy last year, or President's Trophy winner last season, and then we lost to the exact same team. And then this one was on the video I made about where I was analyzing if Vladimir Tarasenko might have solved the Hurricanes' scoring woes. I'm glad I'm not the only one. I truly believed we need a superstar to get us over the hump. I no longer think that's the case after 2 months of the 23-24 season. Carolina has systematically hit a wall. Who or what will get them over that wall has remained to be seen. Well, we've seen a little bit of it now. So here's something that I noticed. They're not dumping the puck in as much. Clean entries are happening a lot more often now. And they're shooting less, but converting on high danger chances a lot more than they were before. That has been especially prevalent last night when they were playing the Rangers. Less so, but still to a great degree when they played Toronto. When they played Nashville was a perfect example of that. 5 goals on 25 shots. The power play has been clicking. It's actually been making the difference sometimes like it did against Toronto. The game winner last night against the Rangers was scored on a power play. So I think that, and I was talking to him when I was talking to my buddy AB over on Caniac Sessions when I was a guest over there the last time that I recorded with him, to use a baseball analogy one more time. The suffocating forecheck, the dump in, puck retrieval with numbers type of playing, you can't do it all 60 minutes and win. You have to score. Now, if you go into the third period with a 3-goal lead and you play like that just to shut them down, that's your reliever. But to start off, more clean entries, more high danger chances, more finishing on high danger chances, and that's what's been going on. So it looks like that who or what that was, it was kind of collectively, it seems like the whole team is doing it now. It seems like everybody just all grabbed together, they all grabbed the rope at the same time and started pulling the cart, and they're all doing it together. Yeah, some guys are putting up more numbers than others, but that's another factor with it. Our best players are being our best players right now. Our superstars, Andrei Svechnikov, Sebastian Aho, they're doing it right now. And then part of the reason I left this comment up here about Steph Nason being elite, the guy is much more than a depth player. He's a depth player with an above average scoring touch who brings a lot of leadership to it. So right now, I think everybody's grabbing the cart and pulling. I think that that's where we're going with it. Canes are definitely headed in the right direction, and their record of the last few weeks shows that, and they just got to keep it up. Thomas, thank you very much for all the comments. I appreciate it. All right, so this is this is the first comment I've ever got from this guy, but it's also one of the best comments that I've ever gotten, one of the most detailed ones I've ever gotten. I believe that says Strogy Def for the name. This is a two-parter right here. Thank you very much for this comment. I really liked this one. I reread it 2 or 3 times, actually, and I was really looking forward to the mailbag in particularly because of this one and a few others, but I really like this one. Hi. First, I got to say, I am a big Hurricanes fan for a number of years now. I really appreciate your work. I watch all your videos, and I mostly agree with everything you say. Thank you. I am strongly influenced by hockey analytics as well as being experienced as a player. Here are a couple points to the current situation that I think are important to see. One thing with hockey analytics, I'm a big believer in them too. The reason I don't cite the advanced stats a ton yet is I'm still kind of learning my way around them and how to apply them, so that way I don't stick my foot in my mouth any more often than I already do. But I'm a firm believer in these. I'm just figuring out when and where to apply which ones before I really start citing them a lot. But I'm a firm believer in analytics as well. They do play a really big factor, a bigger factor than maybe they ever have. 1 point production. Now, this was 3 weeks ago. Things have changed since then, but what he was saying is absolutely true in all this. 1 point production, simply put, games are ultimately won by scoring. Point production. In this area, Kane's best player right now is Sebastian Aho with 22 points, which makes him 79th in the league. I need to go see what he's at now with the tear that he's been on lately. He might be in the top 30 by now. That is just not good enough for a cup contender. I agree. That's absolutely true. When it comes to goal scoring, the best on the team right now is Teuvo Teravainen with 11 goals, and he's cooled off, which puts him somewhere around 40th place in the NHL. Again, not good enough for a cup contender, in my opinion. I agree. As good as the Hurricanes are defensively, and they look like they've gotten back to that normal defensive game they have, and 3 weeks ago this was also relevant. They still needed to increase the scoring, and that's happening now because it looks like they've made systematic adjustments and guys have stepped up. 2, defense before the season, I thought the Canes might have the best D group in the NHL, which to a degree I would still think so, but it seems like Brent Burns is not generating as many shots as he would in the previous seasons. It also seems that he loses more one-on-one battles than he should and than he used to. He's looked a little bit better since the break, but when you type this up, I was starting to worry that he'd lost a step. I really had. He's looking okay now. I do have my doubts about whether he finishes his contract or not. If we win the cup, I wonder if he just hangs it up, because that's really the only thing he's got left to prove, considering he's already got a Norris Trophy and everything. He's already made his money. I think he would be an excellent coach or an excellent broadcaster or something like that. As I made a video about how good I think that he would be in other capacities of the game as well as he was with playing. The question between Chatfield and D'Angelo is not even a question, in my opinion. There are a couple of guys who can quarterback the PP, so it's not like Tony would be the only option there, and Chatfield is overall better defenseman, being with Orlov somewhere around the 70% on XG just a couple of days back. That is true. Offense, this is a tricky one. I think the system might be to blame for a lot of the lack of scoring, even if every season it's the same. Canes push hard, generate 45 shots, but lose 2-1. And then the last few games where it seems like the system has made some adjustments to where they're carrying the puck in and generating more offense off the rush. Now they're scoring a lot more and shooting a lot less. Good observation. The question right now is this actually a good system to hold on to? When it's done properly, it can help bring a lot of points in the regular season, but let's not forget that there have been a lot of close games and a lot of games won in OT last year, which simply put comes back to the fact that it doesn't allow a lot of goals against, but it also limits goals for. True. It seems like Boston, for example, lets their opponents play more, but only when it wants them to play. So I've heard that concept before. It's kind of I forget, someone said something to me one time, and it was like a perfect phrase. It involved the word containment, offensive containment. Basically, what you're saying, they let them play, but they dictate the terms, and then when they're ready, they impose their will on the imposing team in their own zone. So yeah, I've definitely noticed and heard that. That's a good observation as well. That might be something to look at. When it comes to skilled players, I think these are ones that win games nowadays, and Martin Necas is a perfect example of that. Possession zone entries prove to generate more offensive zone time and ultimately more high-danger chances than the simple dump-and-chase kind of play, especially nowadays with no two-line pass, trapezoid being a factor and all that, yes. Maybe it's better to generate 30 shots with 10 of them being AAA scoring chances than 45 shots with only 5 of them being AAA scoring chances. You have been proven absolutely right on this over the last few weeks, because ever since they came back from the break, this is exactly what the Hurricanes have been doing. Less shots, more goals. Like, this is spot on, dude. Like, you've absolutely nailed it here. Number 4, goaltending. Right now, the Canes goaltenders are on the very bottom of the league with GSA expected, as well as the worst save percentage. Kochetkov with an 87.2, Ronta with an 86.07. That is simply not good enough for a contender, and with Anderson likely not coming back this year, maybe never. I've got a lot to say about that. I really don't think he's coming back. There's a good case to look at available options. Ronta is not going to get any younger, and Kochetkov needs more time on his development. Even though he's been playing well better lately, like I was talking about earlier, I agree with that just from the fatigue factor. With him, I'm not worried so much about the body as I am with the mind, just because of how young he is. And he's still learning English. He's got a little bit of a barrier with, my dad pointed that out. He's got a little bit of a language barrier with everybody on the team except for Svechnikov and Orlov. Canes have absolutely stacked prospect pools, so there's definitely something to work with on the market. Right now, I could think of John Gibson. Yep, that's a good one. With some salary cut by the Ducks. He'd have to be, because that's a pretty high cap hit. Connor Ingram, that would be an excellent one. Him or Kirill Vejmelka, as far as Arizona goes, I'd take either one of them. UC Saros, I think Nashville's going to hold on to him just because they're still fighting for a playoff spot. And UC Saros, he's definitely someone who can steal his game. UC Saros is definitely someone who can steal a game. UC Saros might even be able to steal a series. He learned from someone really damn good, being that of Pekka Rinne. All of these goaltenders might be available for the right price offered to their teams. Also, it is very hard to be a goaltender on a team which doesn't allow a zone entry for 15 minutes and allows an odd man rush or a pure breakaway, which kind of goes back to point number 3. Is the system really good enough to actually go as far as the Stanley Cup Finals? I'm not so sure. The foundation of the system, I think, is it needed to be adjusted. It looks like they've done that. Let's hope that holds true. But so far, you've been absolutely spot on with everything. Even with Kochetkov playing better now, I still think that they need to go get another goalie. Now, as far as Anderson goes, I know that they said the whole thing about he's resumed skating and he's cleared to play in a month. But here's the thing about it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I have not seen like a single tweet. I have not seen a single article posted at Invisalign Skating. I think Waddell was trying to get the market to drop its prices. He was trying to get Carolina to not look so desperate to get a goalie so that maybe the market would come down for them. But even though Anderson has been resumed to clear skating, I have yet to see anything about him stepping on the ice. 5, overall, I agree that the team should not make a hasty trade for a so-called sniper. For example, the type of player that Mike Hoffman used to be, Patrick Laine, etc. What the team really needs, though, is a difference maker. The team lacks a player that can take games into their own hands. It's very hard to get one, though, because, of course, there's just a handful of them, and teams are going to keep them no matter what. Nikita Kucherov, David Pastrnak. That's a good point. I think William Nylander would fit nicely, and he might come close to what I mean by a difference maker. It is definitely better to overpay someone like Nylander by up to $2 million AAV than sign a washed veteran who would help with experience. So I think Don should be aggressive on this one. Yes. So that everything you're saying right here is why the trade I was really looking for. So as far as getting a difference maker, or what a lot of people describe as a game breaker, there are not a whole lot of options on there, and you have to give up a ton of stuff to get them. Everything that you're saying there is absolutely right. Now, if they're going to bring in a supplementary piece, it needs to be absolutely just like what you were saying in the last sentence there and everything like that. You don't need a Mike Hoffman. You don't need a veteran in their early to mid-30s. You don't need another Max Pacioretty. That's why I was thinking if the Hurricanes wanted to maybe get a package deal together for Nick Schmaltz and Connor Ingram. That's my dream trade right now, because then you get the right-handed center that I think the Hurricanes still need. You can put Drury back on the wing. You can bump KK down to the third line, which I think will help him ultimately rediscover his game. You can rearrange the top 9 a little bit, and then when Jesper Foss gets back in the lineup, you can put the regular fourth line back together, find some consistent chemistry with the forwards. Then you have a really, really good insurance policy in net if you get Connor Ingram or Kirill Vejmelka. Now, if you make a trade like that, Pesce would probably have to go. Shea would have to go maybe. And I'm not really willing to give up either one of them. If I had to give up one of them, I'd say Pesce. In terms of return and clearing salary, Pesce's the most expendable guy on the blue line, in my opinion. It's the one we would get the most back for and clear the most salary at the same time. Nylander, even if they don't get him signed, I don't think they trade him. Toronto is desperate to make a deep cup run. I think they're going to hold on to all their assets. If they trade Nylander, it's going to be a trade that they feel like that they won, at least in the short term, by a landslide. I would like William Nylander to be here. I think he would ultimately be an excellent fit. And the best part about it is you don't even need him to supplement the top line with the way Aho and Svechnikov are playing together. So do we have a real game breaker, difference maker type of player? One that's like that night in and night out? No. Aho does it sometimes. Svechnikov does it sometimes. Natchez does it sometimes. Then you have those guys that give you a steady presence like Shea, Slavin, Pesce, Nason. But as far as having a pure game breaker, the Hurricanes don't have that. Do they absolutely need it? It would be nice to have, but it's also something that might not be worth spending the assets to get, and that's why I think a guy like Nick Schmaltz would put the team, albeit very narrowly, I think he would put the team over the hump. Plus, you get a little bit of an insurance policy in the event we have something unexpected like with what happened to Svechnikov last season. Thank you very much. That was a great comment, an excellent analysis, and thank you very much for the compliments. So these 3 comments right here were also on the same video where me and AB and Griff talked about the Canes issues and everything like that. And we were talking about, guys that could potentially get traded for. Ryan8783 says, I like the Lindholm idea, but it'd take me a lot to accept him on this team again. So if you're referring to the whole storm surge thing, he actually said that he regretted that after the fact because he thought that the fans were booing him and they were actually booing Bill Peters and Noah Hannafin. And if I'd been there, I would have died from booing because I didn't like either one of those guys. But like I said, it's a coin toss between him and Alexander Semin, that being Noah Hannafin. It's a coin toss between those two to see which one of them I hated more. But Noah Hannafin is definitely one of my most hated Hurricanes in history. And the only reason I didn't backflip when I found out he got traded was because I was in a movie theater. And I was doing my best not to yell when I found that out. Will Parks 1107, personally, I think the players are done with the system. I was starting to get that vibe too, but it looks like they've made some changes to it, so hopefully they're good to go now. They've been playing well for the last couple of weeks. Let's hope it keeps going. Also, the team does not trust the backstop duo. The team, to me, looks terrified to make a mistake in turn. They are making a ton of them. Yeah, they were definitely playing with a lot of hesitation. You're right about that. Fix that and the team plays loose and comfortable. Yeah, when the team has confidence in the goalie, they're playing a zero hesitation game. They're not second-guessing anything they do because that game's played at breakneck speed. You have to be quick, you have to be decisive, and they weren't doing that. But with Kochekov playing the way he is now, everyone is playing much better. Kochekov playing as well as he's playing, that confidence is radiating throughout the lineup now. So that's a good thing. Hopefully that keeps up. And then Hamilton Hockey Canes 6766 says, I really think that everyone saying that we were going to win it all at the start of the season gave us a really big ego, me included. Yeah, me too. I got really confident this season. Hopefully this has humbled the team as much as it has me. And as I said in my comment reply to you, it brought me back down to earth. It really did. Like, I don't think it just brought the team back down to earth. I think it brought the coaching staff, the front office, and the fans all back down to earth. We can be cup favorites all day long, and as good as this team is, they still have to get there. And I know, I said this on the video that these comments were from, part of their problem is they want the playoffs to start tomorrow. This entire team minus Orlov, Bunting, and D'Angelo was here last season. They lost in the conference finals to an inferior team with good goaltending. So guys, thank you very much for those comments. I really appreciate it. Alrighty, so these comments are from various different videos. The first one, Will Parks, is from the video where I revealed my new logo. Thanks again, BG Edits, for that. Man, I really hope they get in a good stretch of Hurricanes hockey after the break. You got what you wanted, and so did I. This is another one from the Alexander Nikishin video. Nikishin, one love. He's a really good hockey player. I'll give him that. Huge Wolfpack fan. AB Kaniak Sessions in the video where I was talking about UNC making their plans to build their hockey arena. He says, I didn't know UNC was building a rink. They have the money for it. Bunch of under-the-table handles. Jack Mandeville 6661 says, hey man, Aho on track for 96 points at the moment. He's really wanting to prove me wrong and get a 100-point season. He's going to mess around and have a 100-point season at the rate he's going. If he keeps it up with these nutty 4-point games, and he will do it. Love to see Svech back. Canes finding their stride. I don't know, man. Aho's been a bum after that. He's only had 3-point games and 1-point games since then. He's washed. He's done. He's a joke. Can't believe I spent money to get that guy's sweater. As I'm wearing an Aho t-shirt right now. You can't see it, but I am wearing one. Panthers J-Dub, welcome back, bud. If we get this Aho and Svedge version we have right now, I love our chances. If they maintain this chemistry, because they always had a hard time finding consistent chemistry, it seemed like, if they keep doing what they're doing, put the league on notice. Like, they're not messing around this time. And I think all it's really going to take, I mean, there will be more work to be done after this were to theoretically happen. I think if they go in to the conference finals and they win a game, particularly if they win the first game, but maybe win game 3 depending on the circumstances, or best case scenario is they win game 1. I think the floodgates open from there. I think that's just mentally hanging in their heads. If they get over that hump, watch out. I still fear the team lacks offense, most of all finishing. Aho is at 42 points. I wish they went for more forwards in the summer instead of more D-men. Yeah, I'm really wishing that they kind of made a move for a forward as well, but we still got some time until the trade deadline, so we'll see what happens before then, because the market can change a whole lot. There's a lot of teams that are still contending for playoff spots right now. Like this season, as far as the Eastern Conference goes at least, you've always had that rule about if you're in a playoff spot on American Thanksgiving, 80% of the time you make the playoffs. You can throw that out this year. Like, no one's a lock. Like, there's certain teams you can go ahead and count out, like Ottawa, Buffalo, Columbus. But as far as everyone else goes, everyone's in the hunt for at least a wild card spot, it looks like. The standings will probably start to space out a little bit here, especially when we get closer to, like, say, the end of February. You're going to start seeing more teams that are definitively out and that will start to sell. And then you'll see other teams that are definitively in that will start to buy, and that will dictate the market as far as trades go and everything like that. The Hurricanes have enough assets they do need to spend and get somebody. Not necessarily go out and get the quote-unquote sniper proven goal scorer, but a really, really good supplementary piece, even if that's just, someone like a solid bottom 6 guy who would normally chip in 20 goals a season and is a good playoff performer. Kind of like what the Hurricanes brought Kasha in to do before his career, unfortunately, was shortened by his concussion issues. All you guys, thank you very much for all the comments. I really appreciate it. All right, so we got a two-parter here from Jersey Sean. This is also from the video where I had the guys from Caniac Sessions on. And this guy's, always, been a really, really good subscriber of mine. I really appreciate you coming back, bud. One of the biggest takeaways from this is that great goaltending can make a mediocre team great. Yeah, we saw that in the playoffs last year with the Panthers. And I won't even say that they were mediocre. They were good, but if it wasn't for Bobrovsky, they probably got swept, not Carolina. Like you guys mentioned, Boston's tandem has made them a lot better than they should be. And we've seen this historically. I would throw the Islanders tandem in there too. Sorokin and Varlamov is pretty solid. Even good goaltending can lose to great goaltending. Example, Bobrovsky versus Vasilevsky in 2022 second round. You may give up one goal the entire game, but when the other goalie has 40-plus save shutout on the other side, it doesn't matter. See also the 1996 Cup Finals with Waugh and Van Beesbrook. That's a good point. Patrick Waugh and Van Beesbrook. Yeah. I remember that. That didn't even cross my mind though. So having that advantage is huge, especially with the Hurricanes being airtight defensively and having that extra layer of protection at the back of the vault with the goalie. Yeah, I agree with that. No team can play perfectly every game, and when a team wins a game that they deserve to lose, it has a huge psychological effect on the other team while also boosting overall morale. That's another descriptor of us in the conference finals, that's for sure. There is a heavy, heavy correlation with Cup winners, finalists, and great goaltending, with a rare exception of a few like Kempfer for the Avalanche in 22. Great offensive teams can be easily knocked out when facing a poor offensive team on the other side because of goaltending. And the defense kind of goes with that too. I was talking to my buddy Steve about that the other day. If you look at the last several Cup winners, their defense, maybe it wasn't like top tier, like maybe not even on par, like close to what Carolina has, but it was still really, really, really good. It might not have been great, but it was definitely in the really good category. Even if Carolina plays well through the playoffs, they could play somebody like an Islanders who aren't the greatest but have Sorokin who could steal games. That was the biggest thing I worried about when we played against them in the playoffs last year, that Sorokin was going to steal that entire series. Carolina has to make a decision on a full-time starter with Anderson hurt. I figure this would give Kochekov an opportunity to steal the starter role, but Ronta has still seeing a lot of time. With him being their future in net, they have to make a decision sooner rather than later, because with him not getting most of the starts, it's never going to allow him to find his footing in the NHL. And it looks like he's finding it now with the way he's played lately. Make Kochekov the starter and just see how he does. Like, that's actually been working out pretty well. And if they go get another goalie like Vejmelka and you have a 1A and 1B type of situation and rotate them like that, I think that could work out really well too. And that gives Coach Chekhov that time to develop that he needs and everything like that. If they don't have faith in him, trade him while he still has value, and start making decisions on a replacement. Not giving him consistent playing time and wondering why he isn't putting up consistent numbers is not going to work out. Excellent point. Ever since he's been having consistent starts, he's been playing better and better and better. Any sport where younger, inexperienced professional players aren't getting constant time is going to yield the same results, and a lot of younger players get screwed over, especially in baseball where guys are always sent up and down from the big leagues to farm systems. Vasilevsky was actually the same way up until he was named the starter halfway through the 16-17 season. Many in Tampa did not have faith in him because he would have a great game followed by a mediocre or bad game, just like Piotr. But Bishop was getting the most starts at that time. Everything you're saying here is 110% accurate. Vasilevsky's first full season as a starter in 2018, he was a Vezina finalist, and everything after that is history. Coach Chekhov seems to me like he is in a very similar situation. He shows spurts of greatness, but it also hasn't been consistent. It's no guarantee Carolina will make the playoffs this year, and it could just be one off year before they regroup, much like Tampa in 2017, although theirs was mostly due to injury, but they still could have made the playoffs. Take a chance on Coach Chekhov since their current formula is not working within the rotation, and maybe he will get better as a result. They must have read your comment because that's kind of what they've done. It's like working out really well with Coach Chekhov. He's only had one game in the last 7, I want to say, where his save percentage was below 900. And I think the Hurricanes have only lost one game in regulation during that time. I'd have to go back and double check, but the numbers are something similar to that. One more thing I'd like to add, there is still plenty of time to turn the season around, and they've been doing it. They got to keep it up, but they've been doing it. Carolina has shown that they can win in the playoffs, just cannot get over one hump. Look at both the 2019 Blues and 2020 Lightning. Both had horrid starts of the season. St. Louis was dead last in the league at one point. Yes, I remember on December 31st of 2018, St. Louis was dead last, and you know who the next team above them was? Carolina. Dead serious. One of those teams won the Stanley Cup, the other one went to the conference finals. A lot of stuff can happen in the second half of the season, especially depending on the schedule, because most of the Hurricanes' remaining schedule, it's not an overwhelming majority, but it's a good majority, are home games. And we've seen what this team can do at home, especially when they can dictate matchups. And Tampa was 12th in the East in December. Both of these teams, which obviously had potential, figured it out and won championships. A lot of it isn't necessarily about skill level and roster, but how they are currently playing and gelling as a core. A decent amount in this team changed from last year, which can affect chemistry, morale, and the overall feel of how the team operates. Give it a little more time. Even last year, Florida did not play up its potential until the playoffs, and they spent the entire season adjusting to a new coach. If they are still playing this way in February, March, there might be a little bit more of a concern, but also remember, they just have to get to the playoffs. I don't think anyone in the organization cares about a division championship. I don't. That's for sure. I only want them to get the big trophy at the end, and I would like to see Aho hold up the other big trophy that they hand out before the really big trophy. If they are on the brink of wildcard spot going in the last few games of the season, I won't exactly be upset if they have to fight and claw their way to get in, as it leaves them much more prepared than any other team. That was kind of like 2019, and then when we went in the playoffs, they were like, oh, Washington's going to kill Carolina, and I remember telling people around here, I'm like, dude, this team fights wars of attrition. If you don't beat us in 5 games, we will drag you by your heels, and we will beat you in a war of attrition. And that's exactly what happened, because who knows, Carolina could just pop off and win 9 out of 10 here in the coming weeks. Your prophecy might be coming true. Not those exact numbers, but you're close. And everyone will completely change their tune, just like Edmonton this year. Only time will tell. Great stuff. I really enjoyed the tandem discussion this week. Thank you again for the comment. I really appreciate all my subscribers, all my commenters. You guys always leave good stuff here. I really appreciate it. All right, everyone. That is going to be it for the mailbag. I will at least try to do this at least once a month. It's getting harder to keep up with it because I'm getting a lot of comments and stuff now and everything like that. So when I do the mailbag, it might not be every single comment. Additionally, now I also have an email address that is warningtakehockey@gmail.com. If you email me there and wish to maintain your anonymity or use a pseudonym, that's totally fine. I will oblige by that for you. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And if you will, consider donating to my Buy Me a Coffee page. The link will be in the description. Thank you very much. Y'all take care. I will see you next time.